17 children and their driver. Bus 47 simply vanished.
Witnesses swore they saw Bus 47, but the crossing guard's logbook told a different story.
The gates failed at 3:53 p.m., an unexplained electromagnetic anomaly.
Ashley Thompson clutched the faded photograph of Oakwood Elementary's Bus 47 as she stood outside the abandoned school building on Elm Street. The October wind of 1995 rattling the chain-link fence that had surrounded the property for the past 8 years. Beside her, Detective Brandon Mitchell consulted his case files one more time. Though he had memorized every detail of the investigation that had consumed the better part of his career. 17 children and their driver, Ashley said, her voice barely audible above the wind. May 15th, 1987. They left Oakwood Elementary at 3:47 p.m. for what should have been a 20-minute ride home. The last confirmed sighting was at the intersection of Maple and 3rd Street at 3:52 p.m. After that, Bus 47 simply vanished. Detective Mitchell had been a rookie patrol officer when the initial reports came in that Friday afternoon. Parents began calling the school around 4:30 p.m. when their children failed to arrive home. But it wasn't until nearly 6 p.m. that the scope of the disappearance became clear. An entire school bus with 17 children between the ages of 6 and 12, along with driver Margaret Connolly, had disappeared without leaving any trace. The search covered 3 counties, Mitchell said, reviewing photographs of the massive operation that had mobilized hundreds of volunteers and law enforcement personnel. We checked every road, every abandoned building, every body of water within a 50-mile radius. The FBI brought in helicopters, search dogs, even consulted with experts who had worked the Chowchilla kidnapping case in California. Ashley had been one of those children, an 8-year-old who had stayed home sick that day with a fever that her mother later called a blessing. She had watched from her bedroom window as Bus 47 pulled away from her stop without her, carrying her best friend Emily and 16 other classmates into a mystery that had never been solved. The route analysis showed no deviation from the standard path, Ashley continued, studying a hand-drawn map that showed every turn and stop along the bus's usual journey. Mrs. Connolly had driven that exact route for 12 years without incident. She knew every pothole, every railroad crossing, every place where children waited for pickup. What made the disappearance particularly disturbing was the complete absence of evidence. There were no skid marks, no signs of an accident, no indications that the bus had been forced off the road. The last witness, Mrs. Eleanor Patterson, had seen Bus 47 traveling at normal speed toward the railroad crossing at Maple and 3rd Street. The crossing guard, Thomas Riley, insisted that no school bus had passed through his intersection that afternoon. That's impossible, Mitchell had told Riley during the original investigation. Mrs. Patterson saw the bus heading directly toward your crossing. It had to have passed through. But Riley's logbook, which he maintained with obsessive precision, showed no entry for Bus 47 that afternoon. More disturbing still, the crossing's automatic traffic camera, which photographed every vehicle that passed through the intersection, contained no image of the missing bus despite Mrs. Patterson's certain identification. The railroad records, Ashley said, opening a folder she had obtained through years of Freedom of Information Act requests. The 4:02 p.m. freight train passed through that crossing right on schedule. The engineer, Robert Hayes, was interviewed extensively. He swore that he saw no school bus anywhere near the crossing, no vehicle stopped on either side of the tracks. Mitchell had spoken with Hayes personally multiple times over the years. The veteran engineer had worked that route for 23 years and had developed an acute awareness of school bus schedules, knowing that children's safety depended on precise timing and careful observation. Hayes insisted that if a school bus had been anywhere near his crossing that afternoon, he would have seen it. But here's what bothers me most, Ashley continued, consulting notes she had compiled during 8 years of independent investigation. The crossing gate malfunction that was reported that afternoon. According to railroad maintenance records, the automatic gates at Maple and 3rd experienced an electrical failure at approximately 3:53 p.m., remaining down for exactly 7 minutes. Mitchell felt the familiar chill of details that had never quite fit together properly. The timeline puts bus 47 reaching that crossing right when the gates were malfunctioning. Not just malfunctioning, Ashley corrected. The maintenance report describes it as an unexplained electromagnetic anomaly that affected all electronic equipment within a 100-yard radius of the crossing. Traffic lights went dark, car radios lost signal, even digital watches stopped working. During the original investigation, this detail had been noted but not fully explored. Railroad officials had attributed the malfunction to power grid irregularities, though no other area had experienced similar problems that afternoon. The electromagnetic disturbance had lasted exactly 7 minutes, after which all systems returned to normal operation. Ashley, what if the bus was there during those 7 minutes? What if whatever caused the electromagnetic anomaly also affected the bus in some way we've never considered? Ashley pulled out a manila envelope containing photographs she had obtained from the National Weather Service archives. I requested atmospheric data for that day. Look at these satellite images from 3:50 to 4:05 p.m. The weather satellite photographs showed a small but distinct atmospheric disturbance centered directly over the Maple and 3rd Street intersection. The images captured what appeared to be a localized weather phenomenon, a circular pattern of cloud formation that meteorologists had no explanation for, lasting exactly 7 minutes before dissipating. The electromagnetic pulse, the atmospheric anomaly, and the precise timing of bus 47's arrival at that location, Mitchell said, understanding beginning to dawn. What if something happened to that bus that's outside the scope of normal investigation methods? Ashley had reached the same conclusion during her years of research. The children didn't just disappear, Detective Mitchell. They encountered something at that railroad crossing that removed them from normal reality entirely. Mitchell studied the accumulated evidence, witness statements that contradicted each other, electronic systems that failed at the crucial moment, atmospheric disturbances that had no natural explanation, and 17 children who had vanished so completely that no trace of them had ever been found despite the most intensive search in the county's history. The other incidents, Ashley said, opening another folder. I've documented similar disappearances at the same location over the past 50 years. Different decades, different circumstances, but always involving the railroad crossing during electromagnetic disturbances. Mitchell examined the historical reports Ashley had uncovered. A family of 4 in 1962, their car found abandoned at the crossing with the engine still running. 2 freight train workers in 1973 who vanished during a routine maintenance check. A motorcycle rider in 1984 whose bike was discovered upright and undamaged in the middle of the crossing, but with no sign of the driver. It's not random, Ashley continued. Whatever's happening at that crossing occurs in cycles, roughly every 8 to 10 years. The electromagnetic anomalies follow the same pattern, always lasting exactly 7 minutes, always affecting the same 100-yard radius. As if summoned by their conversation, both of their phones began displaying the same error message: GPS signal lost. Location unavailable. They were standing less than a mile from the intersection, in clear sight of cell towers and satellite coverage. But their devices could no longer determine their position. It's starting again, Ashley said, checking her watch. The digital display flickered and went blank, just as the streetlights around them began to dim. The next cycle, the electromagnetic disturbance, is beginning. Mitchell felt the hair on his arms stand up as the air around them began to feel charged with static electricity. In the distance, they could hear the sound of a diesel engine approaching, the familiar rumble of a school bus traveling at moderate speed down Elm Street. But Oakwood Elementary had been closed for 8 years. There were no children in this neighborhood anymore. No reason for a school bus to be running its route through streets that had been abandoned since the school district consolidated its facilities. Detective Ashley pointed toward the intersection of Maple and 3rd Street, where the crossing gates were beginning to lower despite the absence of any approaching train. The warning lights flashed in the familiar pattern, but the sound was wrong, too slow. But if the electrical systems were struggling against some unseen interference, the sound of the school bus was getting closer, and through the evening twilight, they could see the outline of Bus 47 approaching the intersection exactly as it had 8 years ago, carrying its impossible cargo of children who should have been adults by now, driven by Mrs. Connolly, who should have been retired or dead. Mitchell realized they were witnessing the reason Bus 47 had never arrived at its destination. Every 8 years, the electromagnetic anomaly at the railroad crossing created a temporal loop that trapped the bus and its passengers in the moments before their disappearance, forcing them to relive their final journey endlessly while remaining invisible to the normal flow of time. Ashley watched as Bus 47 approached the malfunctioning crossing gates, understanding finally why no search had ever found the missing children. They weren't lost in space. They were lost in time, caught in a 7-minute loop that repeated every 8 years at the exact moment when electromagnetic forces beyond human understanding transformed a routine trip home into an eternal journey toward a destination that could never be reached. The bus disappeared into the electromagnetic disturbance just as the crossing gates returned to their normal position, carrying 17 children and their driver back into the temporal anomaly that had claimed them 8 years ago and would claim them again 8 years in the future, forever traveling the same route toward homes they would never reach.